I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. Maronite Catholics commemorate the death of their patron. Italians bring their traditions to Brooklyn. And praying for those with breast cancer. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Currents dedicated to the saints. Tonight, we take a look at some saints with special meaning to Catholics here in New York City. We'll also hear about a movie that examines one saint's powerful story. But we start in Brooklyn Heights for a commemoration of the death of the patron saint of Maronite Catholics.
Today is a special day, 1600 years since the passing of who we call Maron. And he continues today to inspire the Maronite Church to holiness. St. Maron is one of the great unknown saints in the Church. St. Maron gave his name to the Maronite Church, but he was a priest, a hermit, an ascetic. He was one of the first in that region of northern Syria.
Because of his spirituality, because of his humility and his priestly ways, he attracted many people to Christ.
And by this rich generosity of the first Maronites came this monastic movement that evangelized all of the Middle East and has come to us today. Christianity is now a kind of a minority in the Middle East. It's still
I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. Maronite Catholics commemorate the death of their patron. Italians bring their traditions to Brooklyn. And praying for those with breast cancer. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Currents dedicated to the saints. Tonight, we take a look at some saints with special meaning to Catholics here in New York City. We'll also hear about a movie that examined one saint's powerful story. But we start in Brooklyn Heights for a commemoration of the death of the patron saint of Maronite Catholics.
Today is a special day, 1600 years since the passing of who we call Maron. And he continues today to inspire the Maronite Church to holiness. St. Maron is one of the great unknown saints in the Church. St. Maron gave his name to the Maronite Church, but he was a priest, a hermit, an ascetic. He was one of the first in that region of northern Syria.
Because of his spirituality, because of his humility and his priestly ways, he attracted many people to Christ.
And by this rich generosity of the first Maronites came this monastic movement that evangelized all of the Middle East and has come to us today. Christianity is now a kind of a minority in the Middle East. It still is indigenous. It always was. It was there before Islam. But in its minority status, some of the Islamic countries are very, very stringent in the freedoms that they offer to Catholics and Christians of the Middle East.
There's always been this persecution of the Christians in that area of the world. And so as a result, there's always been migration to other places, but they brought with them their faith, their tradition.
Right now, the amazing communion that exists among 21 Eastern Catholic churches and one Western called the Latin Church. It's an amazing unity, and it was shown very beautifully in the Synod last October, for the Middle East, because there you had all the different patriarchs and bishops and priests from the different churches throughout the Middle East, and they were all in communion with the Holy Father. And true to every good Eastern Christian, there's hospitality at the altar of Christ and there's hospitality at the table. So we invite everybody for a little meal afterwards.
It's a special celebration. We celebrate it in Lebanon. It's actually a national holiday. All the schools are closed. All the government closed their office, and we would like to do the same here in United States in our community of faith.
We will have much more on the special Saints edition of Currents, so please don't go anywhere. When we return, she helped New York's immigrant communities, and one neighborhood honors her. Welcome back to this special edition of Currents dedicated to the Saints. I'm Liz Faublas. It's been happening for more than 125 years in one Brooklyn neighborhood. Each July, Italian Catholics converge on Williamsburg for the Feast of the Giglio. It commemorates Saint Paulinus, a 5th century bishop who gave himself up so that a boy may be freed from slavery. Paulinus was eventually let go, and a big celebration followed. Fast forward to the present day as the festivities continue.
Here we are in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the Italian section of Williamsburg. For over 125 years, we've celebrated the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Today is the centerpiece, really, the highlight of the entire feast is Giglio Sunday. And by that we mean that the Giglio and the boat are danced through the streets, and they reenact the 5th century pageant in which St. Paulinus saved the children of his town of Nola.
We've got wonderful food, we've got wonderful people, we've got wonderful vendors. It's a great place to be on a Sunday afternoon.
When Mount Carmel Parish was founded, a large part of the population that's here came from the town of Nola in Italy. And the actual Feast of the Giglio in San Paolino is celebrated there in Nola. So they brought their tradition from Nola with them to Brooklyn.
We bring Christian values into the street. With the Giglio, represents a lily, represents love, the love that we have for our saints, and our parish, of course, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, #1.
This is my family's hometown in Brooklyn. This is the old neighborhood, old Italian neighborhood that my family comes from, and so I come and pay respects.
You have hundreds of people who come back every year. Some people moved out of Brooklyn to Queens, to Long Island, even further. They come back every year. It's really a part of their blood. It's a part of their family tradition. Their parents, their grandparents did it, their great-grandparents.
I've been here for the last 35 years. I do this. My whole family's done this. I couldn't go on without this.
Back at the turn of the century, in the late 1800s, the late 19th century, approximately 5 million Southern Italians from all over southern Italy, Sicily, Nola, Naples, came over to Brooklyn. And many of them kept their ties with the old world. Many of them still, to this day, have family that they keep in touch with in Nola.
On each structure, there are 98 lifters. Each corner has their own lieutenant that controls their corner. There are 2 structures, the Giglio and the boat. So there are 4 lieutenants on each structure, 8 altogether.
It's a great, exciting time because everybody has such enthusiasm. Everybody really just has a sense of love for the parish, love for the feast, and really that translates as a love for our faith.
I come here every year. I'm lifting next Friday for the Children's Giglio, and I love here at Mount Carmel in Brooklyn.
It's also wonderful when we have the processions that go into the neighborhood because it's really a matter of bringing the faith to the people who sometimes on their own can't come to the church.
Italians also hold another saint close to their hearts, one who actually walked the streets of Brooklyn. Mother Frances Cabrini was sent from Italy to the U.S. to help Italian immigrants. One of the neighborhoods in which she worked, Carroll Gardens, has immortalized her in typical city fashion with a mural. We were at the dedication where Bishop DiMarzio made a revelation.
I have a confession to make. I've fallen in love with a woman, and her name is Frances Cabrini. Mother Cabrini is most famous because she's the first American citizen, a naturalized citizen, to become a saint.
Maria Francesca Cabrini. She was born in a little town called Sant'Angelo Lodigiano, right outside of Milan, Italy.
As a young girl, she wanted to be a missionary. She wanted to go to China. But when she went to the Pope told her, no, not to the east, but go to the west, because there were many calls then from the United States for missionaries to take care of the many Italian immigrants that were coming.
She landed here in Brooklyn. She first landed in Manhattan and then came over to Brooklyn and was welcomed by Bishop McDonald, the second bishop of Brooklyn, and she was given money by Bishop McDonald to start a school. So she lived here, she walked these streets, she ministered to the people, and most importantly, to the Italian immigrants.
Part of the melting pot process is to convince new immigrants coming in, like we Italians who came in here around the turn of the century, to stop being Italian American and become American.
Her life was one that was lived for God and others. She took care of the immigrants of her day who were greatly discriminated against. But today we need her intercession because we have immigrants today who also are not receiving the correct treatment they should have in our beloved country.
3, 2, 1.
She's really a great example for all of us. Italian immigrant who came to this country and inspired by her Catholic faith and her immigrant Italian experience, worked hard to set up schools to create programs that served immigrants, that helped people learn English, connect to this country, and have rich lives of opportunity. I thought that's the story that we need to be telling now. And we need to remember that the immigrant experience is what makes New York City what it is. We want to welcome immigrants. We want to help them become a contributing part of this city and this country. And that's what I'm so pleased this mural is going to help do.
The essay contest for Mother Cabrini, that was probably over 200 or 300 essays. It was a giant bag. And we read through every single one of them and found some key elements, and we try to represent those through images.
Immigrants, when they come to this country, they're very humble. They go to a huge country, they have to learn the language, the new ways of doing, and that's what Mother Cabrini did. It's try to educate everybody and try to take care of people that did not have anything.
Mother Cabrini is not only the patroness of immigrants, which the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens is the Diocese of Immigrants, but she's also the patroness of the new evangelization. And so she sends that message as a woman, as an immigrant, that no matter who you are or what your stature is, you're able to do great things.
And don't go anywhere. There's more currents ahead. When we return, the story of one saint's restless heart. Welcome back. It's a powerful film that brings one saint's story to the big screen. Restless Heart depicts the life of St. Augustine, the first time it's been done in a feature-length film. Ignatius Press has the U.S. distribution rights to Restless Heart. I spoke with Ignatius President and CEO Mark Brumley. Mark, St. Augustine has been described as the North African educator who became one of history's greatest teachers of the faith after a very dramatic conversion. Now, this is a really powerful legacy, and we hear what led up to this characterization in Confessions, but in your opinion, briefly, what is St. Augustine's greatest contribution to the faith?
Oh, his greatest contribution, well, I would say it is what is true of any saint, is the example of holiness, but of course each saint is different, and so the way in which holiness is manifested in the life of St. Augustine is in this wonderful interplay between faith and reason. Mm-hmm. He's a man of deep faith. He's also a brilliant man, a man of great reason, and his use of reason to present the faith, and his use of faith to understand more deeply. It was just from St. Augustine via St. Anselm that we get this definition of faith, which is of theology, which is faith seeking understanding. And so I think that's Augustine's contribution, is holiness, permeating the use of the mind in order to believe more deeply.
Mark, what I really appreciated when I was doing my research about the book and about the movie was the fact that there was a relatability to St. Augustine, which of course is difficult to put into words. How do you really relate to a saint? But when you talk about the movie Restless Heart, it follows St. Augustine through this restlessness. We watch him as a youth pursuing fame and power, and then through various Gnostic philosophies. He was just restless through his life. He was never really satisfied with anything he was pursuing until he encountered Christ and his church. And I found that to be so moving. Can you talk to us a little bit about that journey?
Well, sure. His journey is, in one sense, the journey of every human being. You know, we think about people who are so-called cradle Catholics, and of course, there are people who were raised in the faith who never really kind of go away or go astray from the faith. Augustine has something to say to them, too, because in each of us in our lives, there's a period of searching of some kind, even if we stay within the church. But of course, he has a powerful story for those who maybe are raised in an unchurched setting, or who are raised as Christians, raised as Catholics, and who wander away. And really, it's the story of coming to know that God is our origin, he is our sustainer right here and now, and of course, he is our destiny. That famous line, the title of the movie, Restless Heart, comes from that famous line in the opening of St. Augustine's Confessions. You know, Augustine is addressing the Lord in the Confessions, the story of his life. He says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And so there is this need that we all have for abiding and resting in God, and Augustine's story is a model for us all in that regard.
And Mark, before we go, I have to find out, how can Catholics, the faithful, everyone, see this movie? Is it available in theaters worldwide or theaters near certain dioceses? How can we actually go in and hear and see about this brilliant man?
Well, here's what I'd say, two things. If the film is Restless Heart, and people want to find out more, can go to the website, www.restlessheartfilm.com. That's restlessheartfilm.com. They can find out more about it, and they can do two things. First, they can see if there's a showing of the film in their area. There's a place on the website that shows where the film is going to be shown. And second, if they're interested in having the movie in a theater near them, they can use the contact information there and see what they have to do to have what's called a sponsored theatrical showing. And that's really what we're doing here. These are sponsored theatrical events. Churches, parishes, church organizations, pro-life organizations, other kinds of organizations, are organizing and sponsoring theatrical screenings in their local area. And they can invite people, they can sell tickets to have them come to watch this film, Restless Heart, Story of St. Augustine, in their local theater. They can do it as a fundraiser. They can do it, probably more importantly, as a faith raiser. So it's a great opportunity. And to do this, they just go to restlessheartfilm.com.
All right, Mark, thank you. We're going to leave it there, but I do thank you for that. I appreciate your being here, and we here at Currents wish you great success with this film. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for all you do.
You're very welcome. Mark Brumley of Ignatius Press, which, by the way, has also released a new critical edition of Augustine's Confessions. Don't go anywhere. More Currents ahead. Coming up, turning to prayer to overcome illness. Finally tonight, a saint's feast day is certainly a time to celebrate, but it's also an opportunity to ask for help and healing and to give thanks. That was exactly what took place at St. Catherine of Siena Church in Manhattan on the feast of St. Agatha, the patron saint of those living with breast cancer.
For many here today, for this celebration of St. Agatha, for those who live with breast cancer, there has been a great deal of passion that is suffering. Here in the suffering, here is the greatest and the most passionate fulfillment of Jesus' words, that I may preach. Suffering does not have the final word, that sin and death do not conquer, sickness will not prevail, because the passion of Jesus Christ conquers all.
They've come for the celebration of the Feast of St. Agatha, who's the patroness of those who live with breast cancer and other related diseases. It's the third time that we've hosted this celebration, and we find it growing every year and people coming back, and it's just really a great success.
There's so many people who come in who have cancer, and breast cancer in particular is a very common form of cancer. And so there's the people that come into our office who are parishioners of ours, who are daily mass goers, who suffer from the disease, and we wanted to provide something for them to comfort them specifically, and also be a witness to the other members in our community who maybe are not ill with the disease themselves, but who have been touched by it by people in their families and friends, and also to bear witness to those who are suffering in our community, that we stand with them and that we're praying for them, and as a people we're journeying together.
Oil is a sign of healing, it's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of being chosen. So to anoint the people with the oil of the sick is all part of the way that we recall the tangible presence of Christ in the lives of the people.
We pray that they would be healed physically, but also of any spiritual infirmities. And for the larger church that's gathered here today, it's a witness for us to better understand that Christ is the healing life in our life, in all of our lives, no matter where we are, no matter if we're sick with cancer or not.
They simply knew by the way Jesus lived that his compassion, his mercy, his healing was not just for himself or his inner circle. It was for all people.
I am a breast cancer survivor. I had breast cancer in 2001, and I went through multiple surgeries and chemotherapy, and now I'm trying to give something back to my friends and other people who I know have been afflicted. And I come here to this Mass because it offers me a chance to heal for myself and also to pray for my friends who are suffering.
God and the Church are with them, and we will walk with them through all of the illness, through the healing, please God, and until he calls us all to himself.
And that is all for this special edition of Currents. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net, and we leave you tonight with more from the celebration of the Feast of St. Agatha. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.